we build communities around the impact we want to make in the world? How do we get people engaged and excited to support our missions when everyone is so busy already? How do we get others to care? This season will bring you people that decide to look closer. They look where others have turned away. They are building communities to make a positive impact. I am Regina Larco, and this is #Impact, a podcast about stuff that matters. I sit down with Diana Wu David, a former Financial Times executive. Diana is an expert on effective leadership, and she's also best-selling author of Future Proof: Reinventing Work in the Age of Acceleration. She helps people and organizations understand the future to find their place in it. She also runs the fabulous global Future Proof community. These are people going from success to significance. Diana, something I heard you say on the fabulous Risky Women podcast, shout out to Kimberly Cole and her team over there, where you shared, what I learned, and I quote you now, is that having a community of people who can challenge you and really be there as you do a transition is super important. And it's a make or break thing because people don't like change. It's hard enough to do it yourself. But if you're surrounded by people invested in the past, it'll be that much harder. Welcome to #Impact, dear Diana.
Thank you, Regina. I still remember before this podcast was even born, sitting in a cafe with you in Hong Kong, first meeting you. And so I am so excited to be on the podcast. And I'm so excited and so proud of you for what you've built and the community that you've built around this podcast. So it's so great to be here.
I'm so glad you bring that up. Our first
date,
meeting, first meeting, and yeah, I remember I had my little baby girl in the carrier with me, and I was very brave going into. I mean, I can just say how it is. I had admired your work, I had listened to your talks, I had heard you speak on another podcast. Yeah, and as I was trying to figure out how I can bring my own voice to the world, I just wanted to connect with people that inspired me. So that moment was really special to me, sitting there in that cafe in Sheungwan.
Yeah, me too.
Oh. And my daughter was also, I don't know how old she was, a few weeks old. She was listening to what you had to share back then.
Yeah, later.
No, already that day, right? So now she can listen again. I'll ask her, do you recognize Diana's voice? Yeah. And as we are both building our communities, right? It's something worth exploring to document the journey. And I'd love to just learn from you. What comes up as I shared what you said a couple of years back on Risky Women podcast?
So the first thing that came up was, oh gosh, I wonder what I said. Because I tend to speak from the heart. And sometimes when that gets replayed back to you, you think, that I meant that, but I might have said it in a different way. But yes, 100%. There are a million ways that I have spoken about the future-proof community. And, I think that it's evolved, but it was born out of my own desire in a transition. And I've done many transitions to have more community, to be around people who I could bounce ideas off of. And I have really invested in researching and knowing more about the future of work, and increasingly feel like that yearning to belong and witness each other's personal and professional journeys and coming together around supporting and challenging, those are so important for people in transitions and, in life, really. But if you can form a community around a common journey that people are on, be it launching a podcast, or for my future proof community, it is really about being 45 and over and designing that next chapter of your life where you've proven to people, you can do it by everybody else's measure, but you want to try to do it by your own measure, on your own measure of success. And having people around you who are on that journey can be super powerful and so inspiring.
And I understand that one of the most challenging parts on your own impact journey was deciding to leave your corporate job in 2016. And in October of that year, you gave a TEDx talk, and there you said, what if we all took the opportunity to consciously think what it really means to live? And that, even just when I saw it the first time, and I recommend everyone to go and find your TEDx talk and watch it and take it all in. And now as I rewatched it in preparation for speaking with you today, that call to action, that really made me pause. Would you look at how you would answer that question for yourself differently now than back in 2016? Has that evolved in any way? What does it mean to live?
So one of the things that I was thinking about when we were talking about the day we met was that TEDx talk, because you referenced one of the hardest things I've done. Actually, one of the super secret things about my life as a person who started out as a change management consultant and now is a futurist that gets people to, envision exceptional futures for themselves, is that I'm really bad at change. So when you said, the hardest thing you did was leave your corporate job. And I said, oh yeah. And before that, the hardest thing I did was to go to my corporate job. And before that, the hardest thing was leaving New York to come to Hong Kong. So lots of transitions. And I remember in the TEDx talk that one of the hardest transitions, that going to the corporate job just after I'd given birth, going off to find a job. One of the things that just made me so happy about you walking into that cafe with your baby strapped to your bosom and going, I'm going to have a coffee meeting with somebody with my kid. It was just like, we have changed in the right direction, right? I spent those early moments pretending like I had not just given birth. And so, pretending that it would be no problem, et cetera. And so a lot of my journey, I think, is being intentional about the choices that I make, but also being really intentional about the way that I communicate the reality of my life and, the situation. And that is partly because I am not in a corporate position now. So I have the freedom to do that. And when I talk to people who are entrepreneurs, when I talk to people who are leaving a more structured environment, I realize now, having done that there is a lot of freedom. So what if you take the moment to pause and think about what it means to really live? When you are an entrepreneur, when you have a portfolio career, as so many people in Future Proof do, that is a wonderful freedom. And you can also have some kind of freedom within a corporate role as well. So I don't mean to say that, really living means that you throw caution to the wind and sell your possessions and, embark out. But there is a trend to do that. But it's about thinking through your days. And we do something in the Future Proof community called a life audit. And it's about digging deep to understand what your values are. And frankly, I don't care what your values are. You could be somebody who just wants to focus on wealth. You could be somebody who wants to focus on adventure. It could be your faith. It could be, to love and be loved. Whatever your collection of values are, living intentionally according to those values is what I mean by to live. Like, I don't get to tell you how to live. I can just do what I can to live by my own measure of success and my own values. And the life audit is literally like an audit of, how am I spending my time? Is it in the way that I said was important to me? Is it aligned to my values in terms of the people that I spend my time with, and the calendar and what it looks like and how I spend my time, and the way I invest my resources and my money? Does all that kind of line up? And I think that my life is very aligned right now, and I feel very grateful for that.
I'm glad to hear that, because I know it's a journey, right? And there are bumps along the road. And I think even if I reflect on my own journey, and I love that exercise you just mentioned that you run your community through, to stay true to these values, even when kind of things get messy and life gets a bit turned upside down. And I guess that's a lot of people that find themselves then in your community as well, that it is maybe sometimes by their own choice and sometimes also not by their choice, a change that has happened within their career. And how can you find yourself in that then again without getting lost? And also with those, I think often when we are looking at that, age, we're in our 40s, where we have also identified with a certain label we have given ourselves, maybe professionally, being maybe attached to a certain company for a long time, and defining our worth maybe a bit as well around that. Like, oh, I almost have to pause, right? That's why I pause. Like, once you strip all of that away, who are you beneath that all, right? And what do you want to bring to the world? And I think that's what a lot of listeners that are tuning in here are also trying to figure out for themselves. Like, how do I want to make an impact in the world, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've found, largely accidentally, is that other people see us and see so much inside of us that often we cannot see for ourselves. And so that's the beauty of community. I did not set out to build a community. I wrote a book. People said, this is a really useful book. Are you going to do a course where we can get together and do the exercises in the book? And I said, I guess so. Maybe I put a website up. minimum viable product. And if people pay for it and they come, then I will run the course. And so what are we on? Cohort 12 now? And the very first time I got people into a Zoom room, and one woman said, I feel really vulnerable. I don't feel like talking about, she was in a corporate role and she was wanting to launch a new business. She didn't even want to talk about it because she was worried, A, what people would think, B, people might steal her idea. And she said, I just don't even know if I want to, talk about this. It makes me really uncomfortable. And somebody else on the call said, in fact, it was Watson, who's also been on your podcast, Watson Jordan of the Resilience Institute. He said, in my experience, when I feel really uncomfortable about something, that's when the magic happens. And it just reset the whole room. And she was like, I never thought about it that way. And then proceeded to open up. And I thought, wow, I am not important here. And that is so wonderful. It's about basically, as I like to say, the smartest person in the room is the room itself. So if I can create a container for people to have those interactions, then we have started to build our community.
And I'm smiling and nodding because I can relate so much to those moments when I have seen that happen as well with my podcasting with impact community, right? When you can take yourself, the aha moment, and you take yourself out of it, and you are almost like you're the facilitator, you're the catalyst, you're bringing people together. And I guess what I always hope to happen is that even if I wouldn't be in the room now, this would still be a thriving conversation and nourishing place for people to connect. But that I still have to figure out. How can I think these conversations are still happening, right? Once this connection are made, people like you mentioned, Watson, with your other community member, they might have that interaction now. They might connect with each other and build something beautiful from that as well. But often we then, as the ones that facilitated it, we don't even maybe not often even know about that this happened. And how do you make that then? How do you measure that, right? That's what I often wonder, like, how do you measure the impact of what happened in that room in a world where we track revenue and numbers, and we are often defining success in these metrics? How do you measure the impact of a community? How do you measure it for yourself? Do you?
It's a great question. I measure the impact of the community by how willing people are to recommend other people to that community. So if they, in particular, my community is about personal transformation. So it is hard to measure. And I think that if people feel like it's been beneficial to them, then it has. And they all take something different from it. And if they feel like it was beneficial enough to tell somebody else that they should come and do it, then I feel like, that's in corporate speak, you could call it the net promoter score, right? that we use. So then I feel like it, people found value enough to invite somebody else. And I will say most of the people we have in our course are through referrals. So there is that element of of value. But I'm always thinking about how can I provide more value? And one of the things that I have been, I guess, grappling with is that the way to provide more value, I intuit, I sort of have this instinct, is by having people within the community providing more value to the community, not just receiving the value. So there's that give and take, right? I could launch an online course where people could just come, pay me, take the course, and never meet me and never meet each other. But there is some magic to the fact that they interact. And so, so I do think that one of the things we've done, for instance, is have fireside chats where people talk about their own journeys. And it is interesting because it requires them to refine their story, which is a part of Future Proof. The competencies we work on are, scanning for the future, being future oriented in terms of what contributions we can make to better futures, being purpose led, storytelling, connected, and adaptable. And so it maps back to what they're trying to do, but it also allows them to contribute their story in a way that helps other people understand what's possible for themselves. And so that I see is the difference between, hey, I launched a company, or hey, I launched a product, versus I'm building a community. Part of the building the community is that people participate and they give and they get, or as Adam Grant says, I think he sort of says the give and take. And that's what makes it flourish. That's what makes it more interesting and valuable.
I agree. Yes. And still, I don't know, how is it for you? But I still find it sometimes, as beautiful as community building is, it also sometimes frustrates me. Meaning that I have this vision, I have this ambition for what I think this community could be and could look like. And I see it in front of me. I manifest it, whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever your reference point is. And as I'm going through the motions of doing it, I stumble and things don't work out. And at times I question, like, am I onto something here? Is this worth it?
It's really hard.
Do you feel that? Is it just me?
No.
Is it just me?
And but you have to pick then, because when I left my corporate job, I spent a year experimenting, and I am a community builder. This isn't my first community. I've done it for the Financial Times for their board director program. There's like hundreds of people there. I would call that a community. I did it for women in Hong Kong. When I left Financial Times, I did a women angel investing network. And I actually interviewed people, and they said, you are going to put so much work in just to get people to meet on a semi-regular basis. And I've worked now professionally with nonprofits who are trying to create communities, and all of them are struggling because it's really hard. So during the metaverse and NFT and blockchain craze, we started looking at the different pitch decks. Those folks had like 25 community managers in their pitch decks for some of the blockchain-based games. And I was like, that just was like this, oh my gosh, that's what it is. Like, I'm one person and I do have a community manager but I don't have 25, and so there is that element. It is incredibly difficult. And so when I heard that, for instance, for the angel investing, I thought, you know what? I'm interested, but I'm not that interested to spend my whole life doing this. But, when I think about future proof, I think this is the most important thing. When I die, this is going to be one of the things that I look back on, maybe just before I die, and go, I'm really glad I did that. And it was, hard. And I spent way too much time for what it felt like we were producing. And yet it changed people's lives. It allowed them a moment of grace and a moment of connection at a time when things were hard, or it allowed them a moment of celebration at a time when things went well. And I think that that is worth it. And I don't care all the time what the outcome is. I know that I will do this in whatever shape or form. For as long as I am able to. And so I think you do have to pick your battles, because the person that is at the founder of it has to go through days where they go, okay, I just spent like 50 hours doing something and nobody showed up. Right? I mean, or it was the most important thing for you, and it seemed like nobody cared and nobody appreciated it. And some days people do say they appreciate it, but you're so in your head that you don't even hear it. So 100%, it is so difficult, and I don't necessarily think that they're meant to last forever. Sometimes people come together, they have a beautiful time, like in a team, in a company, and you have that moment, and sometimes it lasts a few years, and sometimes longer, but it doesn't have to last forever to be beautiful.
It doesn't have to last forever to be beautiful. See, I mean, that's what I said just before we hit record. I just wanted to have this conversation with you, because I knew I would look at community building differently again. Like in this series, all the people that we've had on for this season and how they look at community building. There was a shift for me right now. I had never looked at it that way. That someone who was part of my community, because at that time of their life, it was important to them. Like maybe let's look at one of the first listeners of the podcast 7 years ago, and it helped them to make a career choice. As I often heard actually from students that I've engaged with a lot in the early days. And they made a certain decision, and now they're busy in their careers, and they've maybe become part of another community. And now I always felt, now I've lost them, Actually, no. Yeah. Isn't that beautiful if we would look at our community as something that's past, present, and future?
Now you're getting all multiverse on me. Huh? You're getting to be multiverse on me. It is. Okay, let me tell you a story. So there was a famous comic book artist, and I was listening to this with my son, who was really into comic books and really into drawing. And the artist said that he grew up in a very broken home, and his mother was a drug addict, and he was at school, and he remembers somebody coming into the school, and he was just, they all had to sketch something. And he remembers that the day he decided to become like a world famous cartoonist was when this artist walked by, and he just looked down at this kid's drawing and said, "Hey kid, nice cat." And that was the moment when he said, maybe I have something. Maybe I have something special. And who knows, maybe it was the ugliest cat ever. But I think that those micro mentoring moments, or maybe that's not quite the word, but I do believe that we have to trust that some of those things happen because of the communities that we start. And they're like little seeds. It's something that you heard, but then you go off and you go off and plant your own field somewhere else. And I guess the beauty of being much older is that I don't even remember when, I guess almost 20 years ago, we started this community of women who were working women. And now, it was great. And then it kind of fizzled when people left. And then it reinvented itself. And then it went by the wayside, and it'll reinvent itself again. And now my friend Lucy Chow lives in Dubai, and I'm here, and Rebecca's in New York, and we all do different things. But, for that moment, when we all had very small children, it was a godsend. And we made these wonderful relationships, which we carry forward, even though the actual community is no longer there. It's been supplanted by other things. So that said, we both have our businesses around our communities. So, at the same time that I'm, being this philosophical wise woman and saying it can just go by the wayside, like my business is also my community. So there is a certain amount of like, oh no, we're not going to let go of this anytime soon, because this is like, this is my work day. And these are to a certain extent, I almost think of them as my work colleagues now, because we all have board portfolios and portfolio careers. It's become, something that I am attached to. And as long as it generates value, as I said, I will continue it. But I think in order to take my own ego out of it, I have to also think, if enough people came and said, okay, that's, it's done. Like we got what we needed from it. And if nobody comes for a year, then that's the value that's not there. That's the signal that says this community is done. And I do feel like, even though I'd love for it to go on forever, I have to be mindful of the fact that the community is about the value that you generate for others, and bringing together people who can generate value for each other. And if that's not happening, then, then it needs to change in some way and reform in some way. So I try to be humble about it and not say, come on, guys, we've got to be in community. It's really important that you show up, because this is, our community. I find that it works less well when I take a hard line. Also, I'm not necessarily my community is not saving the world. Like if we were coming together in community around a topic that, was required in my mind to be solved, then it might be different. But our community is a bit meta, and I view it as a resource for people who want to go and change the world. And we are helping each of us have our own purpose, which is all different from each other. And, one person is going to go off and they're going to do sustainability, because that is the problem that they want to solve, or the change they wish to see in the world. Another person, it's mental health. So our community is a little bit more meta. And therefore, I do think if it's resourcing people, if it's serving that purpose, then great. If it's not, then we find another way to achieve our aims.
And the circle I've seen here now is, again, embrace also change within it, right? Even within your community, and being flexible and adapt, and actually to listen to what do they need in this moment of time, and how has it maybe evolved, maybe from cohort to cohort, right? I mean, there must be cohort 1 and cohort 12. There must be ways in which this community has also evolved, right?
Absolutely. And we do change to suit the time. So we've done it through COVID. And now we're looking at doing more things in person. People are traveling more. And I think that it's in line with my more corporate work on the future of work, because part of it is supporting people as they work differently. So people are doing more remote work and they're looking for belonging, and they don't always get that from their companies. They're looking for continuing education. And this is a personal learning network where we learn from each other based on what each other are doing, and on working together on different projects, be it a book or a podcast or a consulting assignment. So it evolves with the needs of the members and what they need from at any given day. But I do also think that it requires a leader. And so as much as I feel like it's like a dinner party when the host leaves, right? As long as you're in the kitchen going, I'm just getting another cold bottle of wine, everybody's happy, right? But if you left the dinner party for 6 hours, people would be like, what happened to the host? I don't understand. That doesn't feel right. So, I don't exactly know what that is. I have yet to see a community that transcends its founder. But that's a journey that you and I can go on, because I do think that, it's possible. It's possible for that to happen, and it's probably a good thing.
That picture, I love that. And oh gosh, I mean, we would have to, this gives a lot of food for thought, for continuing our conversation. Diana, I'm so grateful that you are in my community. I see you as one of my, in the early days of #Impact, all those years, there's always been this connection. I followed your work, you followed mine, and I'm very grateful for that. I just want to put that on the record. I've been connecting with your community members that have then joined my community programs when it comes to podcasting. So that's wonderful. I want to send, and I already did send people your way to look at becoming part of your community, because I meet so many people also that feel lost, right? At this careers and professional development, our work, it's complicated. Yeah. And it helps when we have a leader and a community to become part of, to make a little bit sense of the overwhelm and the confusion that we feel around the change we will need to make just to stay what's the word I'm looking for?
Sane.
Yes, but also look at being resilient in the face of change, as our work environments are changing, as we are maybe made redundant, as we are thinking of, that can't be it. I'm done with corporate. I want to do my own thing. Or I am in an organization and also I feel like there's more to it. So I want to understand, and reconnect with my values as well. So where should people do that? I mean, cohorts are opening up again. Now you're running on the 12th, but there will be another one coming, right?
Yeah, we do 2 or 3 a year, and it's been wonderful. It depends on where you are in the world. I think we need to scale. So my biggest quandary is how to reach everybody across the globe. So we're thinking about doing one this summer that can cater to the West Coast of the United States. And then in October, we'll do another one that is our usual kind of global time zone, which is 9 o'clock Hong Kong time, which is 9 a.m. New York time, and middle of the afternoon, usually 1 p.m. London time. Because we have people all over the world now who come together to do these. So they can go to our futureprooflab.com website and sign up for our waitlist. We have an application form now so that we know people are serious about showing up for each other, because this is a cohort based. That's one of the changes that we made, is you can't just sign up and not come. We really want you to be invested in terms of your time. And I agree, people are lost right now, and having structure and a sense of progress across those 10 weeks and a sense of camaraderie and psychological safety. And finally, let's not forget fun. Like that, I think makes all the difference. It's a hard transition to figure out what's next. And we have people who have been redundant, who were looking for jobs. We have people who are in jobs who wanted some different situation. We have people who were not happy in jobs and did our course and decided to stay in their jobs with new framing, who had done the work to be intentional about how their values matched that. So, I think that there's a wide variety of people who come, but they all really value the time they spend together, taking that kind of time away to be intentional and to figure out how to stay relevant on their own terms.
That's so great. I love the commitment that you make people make from the start. Like, you gotta apply for this, but you gotta show up for this. I'm taking note, Diana. I'm taking note of that. Something to implement for my own community offerings as well. And with that, Diana, you know what's coming. We can't have an episode of Hashtag Impact without the world famous quickfire round. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready for anything.
Making an impact means
helping other people find their place in the future.
Who inspires you in the way they build communities?
Dorie Clark, who has a recognized expert community, is a generous soul who magically connects people.
And what could everyone do right now to make the world an even better place?
Value those micro mentoring moments, even if you compliment somebody's outfit or say hello to them or tell them what they've done that is interesting or wonderful. It's enough.
Yeah, let's all do that. My beautiful Hashtag Impact community. Diana, what a journey that we finally had this conversation. I wish I could have recorded our very first one as well, all those years back in that cafe in Zhongwan. But I'm so glad we got this now here on the record, because I know this will be an episode I will pull out from my archives for years and years to come. And I know our listeners will too, whenever they need to be reminded why showing up for building communities around the impact our listeners want to make is so worthwhile.
Well, I know that I will look back on this and probably listen to it again and look forward to listening to every single episode on community, because it's so important. It is truly the future, and we all need to get a little bit better about how we intentionally build communities.
Thank you so much for joining today. If you would like to get your voice heard on Hashtag Impact, just send a voice note at hashtagimpact.com/story. I will include the link in the show notes as well, so you can easily find it. And if you love what you're hearing here, please tell your friends about it too. I talk to you soon.